A very, very busy day today on Inside the Huddle. A lot to break down around college football, a lot to break down around the world of collegiate sports. And guys, welcome on in. You are the first to join in. I am your host, as always, Lucas Hill. Thank you all for hopping on Inside the Huddle. We have a lot to break down. We got all sorts of stuff that I printed out right before the show that we obviously need to talk about. And I am really excited for what we have to bring to you. So I think that we obviously got to start off with all that has been going on around the college football world. They obviously got what's going on, the comments that Cam Ward made, Virginia Tech hiring Phillip Montgomery as their new offensive coordinator. Trey'Dez Green is no longer playing basketball for now. He said he will join at a later date. And we got some bold moves that could be coming along in the NFL draft. But right now, welcome on in Inside the Huddle. I'm your host, as always, Lucas Hill. If you're watching us on X, make sure that you are leaving a comment in the comment section below. Make sure you like our shows and make sure you repost them to all of your groups so that you can get the word about Inside the Huddle. If you're watching us on Instagram, make sure you leave your comments so that we can get your questions answered, as well as make sure you drop that follow at Lucas_Hill23 on X, at Lucas_Hill17 on YouTube or on Instagram. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe and bell notification. We go live weekdays, sometimes even weekends. Anyways, we got a lot that we need to talk about today. Let's start it off. Big one coming from On Three's Nick Costco. Cam Ward came out the other day and sent a clear message to those picking in the NFL draft about basically he's saying, hey, if you're going to draft me, go ahead, come draft me. But if you're not, you just not. Anyways, let's continue on. Former Miami, he basically said, you better pick him. He knows it's a 50-50 shot with each team. They'll pick him or they won't. It's as simple as that. His confidence is no secret, and whoever picks him in April should celebrate, while the other 31 franchises should fear the big arm signal caller. And this is what he said to the AP the other day. Okay, you're either going to draft me or not. If you don't draft me, that's your fault. Clear signal. You've got to remember, you're the same team that's got to play me for the rest of my career, and I'll remember that. Now, whether or not the rumors are true about him basically skipping out on the bowl game, I don't know. And I don't know what is going to happen from here on out with Cam Ward and his future. You're talking about a guy that's had so much consistency over the last God knows how many weeks, or the last year and a half of being a top-tier quarterback. But is it him or is it the offense that he was in? We saw what he did in the Ben Arbuckle offense whenever he was at Washington State. We saw what he did in the Shannon Dawson offense with weapons that were around him. The question is, can he do it on a bad franchise that he's going to go to? Whether it be Tennessee, whether it be Cleveland, whether it be New England, whether it be New York, the Giants or Jets, for better or worse. It doesn't matter where. Is he going to fare better in their offensive system? Look, I love Cam Ward, and I've been a Cam Ward fan for the last year. He's probably one of the best. He has probably the best arm in the draft this year. Make no mistake about it. I think this is a guy that you need to really pay attention to. And as we get closer to draft day, you have to notice about how good he can be with what you have in store for the next several years as a potential franchise quarterback and what he's going to bring to the table. But this is a bold statement. You've got to remember, you're the same team that's, we already talked about it. Whether it was Ward or head coach Mario Cristobal, in the moment they decided to sit their starting quarterback for the second half. However, it's a decision Ward doesn't regret even today. And this is a quote from him. I think we all just got what we needed out of it. They seen things that they knew they need to work on for this season coming up. And they also knew, when I had what I had on the line. So we can cut this out. It doesn't matter who it was. Cam Ward was not wanting to go back in. People are going to act like he was. No, they weren't. No, it was not. Let's get real about that one. And let's stop defending that. Look, I took it for granted when somebody came in our spaces back in, I think either last month or a month and a half ago. At some point after the Pop-Tarts Bowl, whenever we started to sit down and talk about this situation, we were easily ready to defend him. We had many guys that were Miami fans that flooded the spaces and said, oh, this is wrong. Oh, this is that. We can't trust you. He never quit. They're trying to defend him. But the fact of the matter is that you should have either never played in that game or you should have just played the whole game. That's my statement about it. I understand you were trying to go for a record. What is the point of a record? It's not going to help or hurt you in the draft. It's just there so that it's just something that you can do to pad your stats. We feel like we're doing what's best for the program and myself. I mean, it was a hard decision, especially when some guys on our team didn't play who I thought should have played. It was also, those guys thought about their future the same way I thought about mine. So you can play selfish. Make no mistake, Cam Ward has to be in the right situation in order for him to attain any sort of success. Right now, according to our NFL draft papers that we have here, according to Daniel Jeremiah, which, by the way, we'll be hopping on a Zoom call with him Thursday, and we'll have get some questions answered, and I'll come back with you guys for some more context on what's going on with that. Look, they're saying he may go to Cleveland. They're saying that Tennessee is going to go to free agency to go get a quarterback. I totally disagree. I think Tennessee should really consider moving on from Will Levis. He's not the guy. He will never be the guy. But look, either or. I think that what they're trying to do is they're just trying to get the best in the class. They'll worry about a quarterback in 26, or they try to go after a free agent guy this year. So this could be just the start of just a complete rebuild for Tennessee, but we don't know just yet. They've got him going to Cleveland. The Browns could look to Travis Hunter here, but they need to usher a new era at quarterback. So we don't know just yet. Again, these are mock drafts. Do we know for sure what is going to happen? Absolutely not. I can't attest to what's going to happen, and neither can any of these so-called analysts. Bottom line is that we're not going to know what's going to happen to some of these teams. I don't know, man. Am I excited for what Cam Ward brings to the table? Absolutely. I think Cam Ward has a huge upside to what he's going to bring to the table as a quarterback. If he does go to Cleveland, look, I'm telling you, it's going to be it's a rough one. Because, look, Kevin Stefanski, make no mistake, His butt's on the line. His butt is on the line. You look at what happened last year. Your offense was irrelevant, and you relied on your defense. Well, now you go to this year, and Cleveland's still in a bind. You come back, it's rough. Make no mistake about that. You know, a lot of guys are gone. You didn't draft well. You traded your first-round pick to the Texans and tried to go get Deshaun Watson, but who ended up winning in that sense? It was none other than C.J. Stroud, who the Texans ended up getting. Basically cost them that. Cost them an opportunity. Who did Houston get? Well, they ended up trading that one to Jacksonville, and they ended up getting Brian Thomas Jr., who, by the way, led the NFL, all rookies around the NFL in, I think completion, or I think receiving yards. Could be wrong, though. All right. Everybody do us a favor. Do me a favor. Guys, if you're watching us over on X, type in the comments and see if my camera's kind of wonky or if it's kind of the lighting is off, because it looks a little off to me. Anyways, it's whatever. Let's talk. I want to kind of shift gears for a bit from the UFL. So our good friend Reed Johnson of the Markcast, he's come on the podcast a couple of times. If you wanted further evidence that the UFL is struggling to push ticket sales ahead of season 2, see the voicemail I got. If you want one of many reasons why that might be the case, this number showed up as spam on my caller ID. Hey, Reed, Austin Howard here with the Birmingham Stallions. Wanted to contact with you this evening. We're going through a lot of our old ticket interest forms that came in last year, so you submitted one and just want to try and connect with you this evening. Give me a call when you have a chance. My number here is 205-277-951, whatever. Thanks. Wow. They're struggling. That's why I said this yesterday, if you tuned in, with our good friend Cullen Watkins of the Rough 'em Up podcast, is that they are struggling. And it's rough. Let's just be straight up with each other. It's going to be tough to try and survive another year. They've already talked about expansion in 2026. If they don't get butts in seats, we talked about this yesterday, the league is going to be screwed, and the league is going to suffer because of it. You know what? I just realized I don't think my mic is plugged in. Now my mic's plugged in. Sorry about that. If the league is going to struggle, and the league may end up shutting down once again, if that is the case. Because, guys, you need butts in seats. So here's the thing. This is from our good friend Mike Mitchell, who's a UFL insider with Pro Football Network, also with Alt Football Digest. Many aspects of the UFL in 2024 were universally praised. However, game attendance was an aspect of the UFL that even the league publicly touted as needing improvement. As a result, a shakeup in the league's sales operations was expected, just not so close to the league's kickoff of the 25 regular season. We've seen a lot of brand new guys that are around the ticket era or are taking over ticket sales as the directors in this case. And it's sad, to be honest with you. It's sad that we're seeing this. It's sad that we have to see the UFL struggle like this. And it's sad to see teams struggling to get butts in seats because the league needs it at this point. You have to be able to put those butts in the seats. And if you're not going to be able to do that, then it's going to be a struggle for you throughout the rest of the way. If you are unable to increase their fan attendance, and if you're unable to continue along with what you've been trying to do with fan attendance, the money is going to end up drying up. The league is going to go bankrupt, and then that'll be it. We don't know yet, guys. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right. So we were talking about the UFL and the future of that league yesterday. You got to think this is a big one. Fan attendance has to get better. You know, the love of the game and the fan base that I've seen is incredible. St. Louis, incredible. Birmingham, met a lot of great fans. A lot of which they've followed me on social medias. So they love the Stallions. They love their respective teams. But look, at the end of the day, winning helps. You know, I mean, better promotion. Something that you could do to help the team at the end of the day. What is it? We don't know. You know, it's such a struggle for many, many different teams or many, many different fans to get excited about the league because they don't know the benefits. They don't know the different traits about it. What's going to be good about the league? Are you playing good football? And that's what you need to have at the next level. But hey, we'll see what happens. All right. So we also talked yesterday about the Big Ten and the SEC proposals for many more things, with the latest report coming from our good friend Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports, with the expansion to 14 or 16 teams. The SEC and the Big Ten would get 4 auto bids apiece, while the ACC and Big 12 could get 2 apiece. Although he pointed towards, but yeah, man, it's weird just seeing all this being news because part of me doesn't really like it. Part of me doesn't really understand the need for expansion. First of all, before we start expanding into 16, we got to really look at this from a neutral perspective, not worrying about conferences. We're talking about the game itself. We're talking about the game itself just ultimately kind of being ruined by the money that comes along with NIL, or that money that comes along with the CFP. Money that comes along with being a participant and such, and really getting quality football for the fan experience. You know, I mean, which fan wants to see SMU and Penn State? Let's just get real. They don't want to see that. They want to see your Tennessees and Ohio States play. They want to see the best of the best play. The re-rankings when it comes to the seedings makes zero sense to me. Why? It doesn't seem to make any sense because of this, but because of the new proposal, we're going to see more and more teams fighting for that 4th position. And for the Big Ten, when you talk about that 4th position, your regular 3 right now at this current moment should be Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. Who's going to vie for that 4th spot? Michigan obviously should be the first choice. But we'll see what happens. But let's see how they do in year 2 without Jim Harbaugh. What about Indiana with Kirk Cignetti and company? They could look like a legit contender for the next 2 or 3 years with how they've been attacking the portal. How about Illinois? They return 18 starters this year. And a majority of them, I think half of them are going to be either sophomores or juniors. Some of them may have a decision to make whether they go to the NFL draft or not. And I think some of those juniors should be back. That's just my proposal. But RG3, Robert Griffin III, doesn't like it. He hates it. Now, me personally, I'm kind of understanding where he's at. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense knowing what's happening to college football, but at the same time, I kind of understand with what the direction they want to go with college football. Does it make any sense? Not really. It hasn't for a while. So, this is what he has said. The soul of college football is dying because of money. Allowing the Big Ten and SEC to get 4 auto bids into another expanded CFP it's basically a disaster if you think about it. It's legitimately showing the bias that is towards the major conferences in the Big Ten and the SEC. But honestly, that bias has truth behind it. The bias shows history behind it. And like I've mentioned a lot of times, if you don't like it, do something about it. But into another expanded CFP dilutes the importance of winning. 4-loss non-conference champions don't belong in the college football playoff. The proposed changes to open the door for a monopoly of the sport. The business of college football is trying to destroy it. And by the way, we got a bold claim at the end of the show today. And you guys are going to love it. I think it's going to be amazing that we get to see this. Griffin even offered his own change to the current 12-team format. In my opinion, by the way, it should be 8, which saw its fair share of positive and negative reaction this season. Just for context, the SEC had 3 teams this year, and the Big Ten had 4 in the bracket. The other 5 were a combination of the ACC, Big 12, and Mountain West. Oh, yeah, Notre Dame, too. Love it. The change the college football playoff needs is for conference champs to have a home game in the quarterfinals after the first-round bye. How about this? No more first-round byes. They're stupid. Otherwise, they are getting blessed with the bye and then screwed with a neutral site game instead of having home field advantage. No, it's not. It's just stupid, bottom line. Semifinals and finals can be neutral site, but if we're going to reward conference champs, then let's reward them all the way and give them that home game in the quarterfinals. Their fans deserve it. Really? How about this? This is my proposal. Why not just have an NC2A tournament type bracket where we have a 1 versus 16, a 2 versus 15, all in one bracket? Because that's essentially what we need to head on to. Let's just get real. I mean, that's exactly what we have to get to at some point. It doesn't make any sense for a team that, and with all the freaking re-rankings too. Look at this past year. Look at what happened with Boise State. Going from what, 18th to like 3rd? Clemson going from 16th to 4th? How does this make any sense? It doesn't. Bottom line, and it never will. Auto buys need to go. I've been talking about this since November. And most of the college football world can agree with me that auto buys are a disaster. They've been needing to go for some time. I don't care that you may disagree with what I have to say, but I am telling you the truth about what is having to go. Because if they don't go anytime soon, the integrity of the game is going to be affected by it. Because if we're being real, this makes no damn sense. None of it does. None of it does. Executives of 10 FBS leagues and Notre Dame signed a memorandum of understanding handing control over to the two power conferences, and now they're going to exercise that control. And this is from Ross. Within the SEC and Big Ten, momentum is building to further expand the college football playoff to 14 or 16 games. Disaster. Assign multiple AQs per league, as many as 4 for each of themselves, and finalize a scheduling arrangement together that may fetch millions in additional revenue from TV partners. The playoff format would clear the way for the SEC administrators to finally make the long-discussed moves to play 9 regular season conference games, and would trigger perhaps all 4 power leagues to overhaul their conference championship weekend. In other words, goodbye conference championship games. Conference championship games have been played since the 1990s. Let's be real. Let's be concise about this. The 1990s. And we're just going to get rid of that. So it's going to be just like the NCAA. If you win the regular, you're going to have just what the SEC has. If you have a one division, the best one that has the best record in the SEC, I think, is going to be a top 4 seed. Number 1 in the Big 12, top 4 seed. Number 1 in the ACC, top 4 seed. Number 1 in the Big 10, top 4 seed. I don't think we'll be getting these non-conference matchups anymore. I don't think you're going to be getting your Texases and your Ohio States, your non-conference games like your, I don't know, these FCS programs that come to town for warm-up games or such. That's going to hurt that. What about the FCS? What's going to happen with them? How are they going to schedule their conference games? So we're done playing P4 conferences? What about the G5? What happens to them? Are they going to lose that? If this is actually a thing with doing 9 conference games, how does this make sense in the college football world? I don't know, man. This just feels like one giant S show that is waiting to be showered and is going to shower for a long time. It's going to shower for about 30 years. Here is the bold prediction, by the way. With this in mind, you're talking about 9 conference titles, or you're talking about 9 regular season conference games. And then you go to championship weekend with the college football playoff. So you're going to have all of this for an entire season. 9 games, and then you're going to have, 2.5 months of college football playoff if you go to 16 games? My proposed thing would have 1 versus 16, et cetera, just like the NCAA tournament. But if you have these auto buys for the top 4 teams again, for each conference champion, and if you put in, you shouldn't, I'm still the opponent, you should have just 1 G5 team. But if it gets to a point where these G5 teams, like what happened with Boise last year, get smoked, no. Kiss them goodbye. Kiss them goodbye. So what if there's a tie, though, too? That's another thing we have to consider. What if there's a tie within the conference for 4th place? So let's say LSU and Ole Miss, they both finished 5-3 in conference play. What happens then? Do we just flip a coin? Do we look at the rankings? Do we look at strength of schedule? Do we look at quality wins? We're going back to the BCS system. That is something that the college football world wanted to avoid when we went to a playoff in 2014, is getting rid of the BCS system. But many of you don't know is that they're still using the same computers that the BCS used from 98 to 2013. You thought that went away? Oh, no, no, no. Oh, no, those things are still around. They gonna be around for a while, Buster. You ain't getting rid of them that easy. But this is where we are right now in college football, whether we like it or not. So it comes down to this. The NCAA by 2030 will not be around. Here's why. Because if you look, there's been talk about this since the 1950s. A National College Football Conference. And everybody talks about, well, it's going to get rid of the tradition. It's going to get rid of all this. It certainly is. I am right behind you on that. Believe me. But the problem is this. With that being said, and with that just in everyone's mind, I want you to understand that this Super League is going to benefit the athlete, and it's going to benefit so many more teams around college football than you would imagine. First of all, in the Super League, all right? So the plans got unveiled. It would be called the College Student Football League. So you would have the top 72 programs, mostly by the current Power 5, that would compete in the Power 12 conference made up of a dozen 6-team geographically based divisions. So I think you'd still have your SECs, your Big 10s, your Big 12s. I think some Big 12 teams could merge in with the SEC, but I could be completely incorrect. But then you got to think about where would South Carolina, where would Missouri be? Where would they be? Would they go back to the Big 12? Would they go to some other conference? What would it be? Would South Carolina go to the ACC? A group of the top teams from the group of 8 would be eligible for a promotion to play up against the Power 12 the following season, but there would be no relegation among the Power 12 schools. It's still a long way from being a realistic and viable proposition, and it would require cooperation and coordination between the NCAA and its member institutions, almost all of which would belong to conferences. So by the time we get to 2030, maybe not even 2030, by the 2030s, to the next decade, I promise you, we're going to have this Super League. It's going to happen at some point. And if you think I'm crazy, that's fine. That is completely okay. But you would have CBAs, you would have agreements between the two. The NCAA is getting their butt handed to recently in different lawsuits, in different cases, like what's happened with what happened with Reggie Bush finally getting his Heisman back, with NIL being a thing. You have the 83 Wolfpack team suing the NCAA. Last Chance U is suing the NJCAA. I wouldn't be, but I'm surprised. I'm waiting for Johnny Manziel to put in his lawsuit. I for sure am ready for that to happen. But we'll just have to see at the end of the day, folks, because if you're ready for something like this, I'm telling you, it's going to happen. CST has brought together too many high-profile power brokers to be completely dismissed. But the idea of college sports, which has long lacked any semblance of cohesion, moving away from the existing model and agreeing to a newly unified structure seems like a pipe dream. But I'm telling you, we're closer to it than we believe, with lawsuits being lost, with everything that you see and going wrong for the NCAA in this moment in time. The NCAA is getting their butt handed to. The Tennessee lawsuit, they just lost. You have the eligibility lawsuits that they're losing. You have CBAs that are going to come into agreement. We're going to see this Super League form by the time we get to the 2030s. And I promise you, the NCAA has their clenching their butt cheeks because they are nervous, they are afraid, and they are not happy with what's going on inside of their organization. And there needs to be serious talks about a change in leadership so that maybe they could be in charge of the Super League. But for now, we could see a Nick Saban-led league. Either that, hey, maybe even our good friend Josh Pate could be the leader of this Super League. By the way, I'm all for it. I am all for it, ladies and gentlemen. I am ready for this. Initially, I was skeptical about it. But now that I get a better picture and I see what's going on around college football and around the law, this is going to happen. House versus NCAA. They're going to lose that one. And guess what? It's going to be another blow to them. We are nearing the end of the NCAA and their firm grasp on the athlete. It's coming to an end, folks. It's not going to last very long. And if you just stick by, if you just maintain that sort of just grasp on it, I promise you, it's going to happen. It's going to continue to get better and better and better. I promise you. You can think I'm crazy, but look, we're getting close. All right. That's enough of that philosophical talk that I just gave to you all. Let's talk about some bold predictions for the 2025 college football season. So, many of you saw my post on X earlier today, and I talked about what's going to happen. And I talked about what could potentially go on in the college football playoff. All right, so let's kind of talk about our top three. Number one, Miami will once again fall short of expectations, and Mario Cristobal's seat will be hot in 2026. Folks, he's 8-17 against top 25 teams in his time being at Oregon and being at Miami. Eventually, you're going to get to a point in time where Miami fans are not going to be satisfied with what he is doing. And I'll be honest with you, I would be right there with him. I know that last year was not the best year for you defensively. I know you took steps, but guess what? This is the second time that Coral Gables has witnessed this Miami team get so close to a CFP and then see it ripped out of their hands because of a choke near the end of the year. It happened in 2017 when they lost to Pitt, and it happened in 2024 when they lost to none other than Syracuse. I could be wrong. Again, anything can happen. But at the end of the day, guys, Miami has choked year after year after year against top 25 opponents. In Mario Cristobal's tenure, ever since he's been in Miami, it's been rough. It hasn't gone his way whatsoever. He's 1-6 against top 25 teams. 1-6. The one win last year against Texas A&M. And you just haven't gotten that signature win just yet. You had an opportunity to do it last year against Florida State and Louisville. You blew both of those games. 2024, you didn't even play a top 25 team until you played Iowa State and the bowl game. 2023, I would say that was your hardest season. But Miami fans have to be fed up with these late season collapses that they have. Because it's happened 3 times, I think. No, actually twice. Because you'll see a Miami team start off really hot. They'll do really good to start the year. They'll be a top 15 team or whatnot. And then they'll choke at the end. They'll blow so many opportunities to be a CFP contender, and they'll basically shoot themselves in the foot. Defensively, Mario Cristobal's defenses have not been good. Dating back to his Oregon years, it's been very poor recently. It's been rough. Let's just be real. Because if you want to get better on the defensive side of the ball, you have to go get a play caller that you can actually trust. Now, we'll see what happens with Corey Heatherman, who, look, I've talked with Cole Thompson about him. He's got nothing but positive things to say about him. He's got a lot that he's been able to do ever since he's transitioned from the offensive side of the ball for the first 2 years of his coaching career, all the way up till he was a linebackers coach at Northeastern from 2010 and beyond. Man, first FBS job as a coordinator last year with Minnesota. Minnesota's defense was top 3 in the Big Ten. Defensively, they did really good defensively. I thought this was a solid Minnesota defense, top 50 defense. And he deserved it at the end of the day. I thought that he did really well as a coordinator. And I think that there's so much that he can bring to the table as a coordinator. I think he'll bring some energy. I think he'll bring experience, knowing that he's been on the offensive side of the ball. But again, we're talking about a guy that, in Mario Cristobal, that has struggled horribly with defenses. He struggled horribly being able to try and defend a decent offense. Just completely is falling apart around him. And if things want to get better, he has to go get a play caller. Now, you got him. You got Damian Lewis, who's a former first-round draft pick with Miami. Brings a lot of experience there, but I don't see this team improving a whole lot. I don't know how is your receiver room going to be? Are you going to be able to improve in that department? Despite losing a lot of guys like Jacoby George, Xavier Restrepo, Isaiah Horton, who's now at Alabama. You built through the portal a little bit with CJ Daniels back at receiver, but how do you come back on the defensive side of the ball? That is what they need to address horribly. How does Ethan O'Connor do? I've heard a lot of people talk high about Ethan O'Connor. They think he's a really, really highly touted guy. They have nothing but praise for him. And they have nothing but great things to say about him. We'll see what happens with him. But again, how much longer will they deal with what Mario Cristobal has yet to do at Miami, and how long will this last? I think that this is another disappointing year in 2025, and I think that seat gets hot in 2026. Number 2, Illinois and Texas Tech will make the college football playoff. I've been very high about Illinois, and I've been very high about Texas Tech throughout the offseason. Texas Tech, to me, is one of those teams that is going to really shock the Big 12. I know a lot of people are talking about the Arizona States, sometimes even the Colorados, but Texas Tech is a team that really went under the radar last year. If it wasn't for some of the late game collapses they had on defense, I think they do end up winning 9 or 10 games and they make a college football playoff. I really believe that. Or if not that, they at least go to the Big 12 championship like they should have done the other day or the other year. But I think this defense is going to be a lot better. You bring in a guy like Shell Wood, who led a Houston team that, despite being 4-8 last year, top 25 nationally in defense. Guy has a lot of experience on the defensive side of the ball, and the guy is extremely, extremely talented. The guy has a huge upside to him. And I think what's so great about what his skill set is on the defensive side is that he is a player's coach. And that's what's lacking sometimes. What separates him from being in the Big 12 is that he's a guy that can connect to the players. And that's what's so good. Offense, going to be great as usual. And I think this might be an even better offense than what we saw last year. I think Behren Morton's the best quarterback in the Big 12. Now, I know people are going to talk about Sam Levitt and what he has with Jordan Tyson. But I will say, arguably, that Behren Morton's up there. Some people will have him number 1. Some people will have Sam Levitt number 1. To me, it's a tie between the two. I think that at the end of the day, I think Behren Morton will have the advantage. I think Texas Tech and the transfer portal dominated. I mean, they own the transfer portal. They owned being able to get dudes out the portal. But you look at the receivers that he has around him. Sure, you may have lost a guy like Micah Hudson, but think about what's going to happen with a guy like that you've been able to replace. Think about who you've been able to replace in that time. You know, you bring Quentin Joyner, you bring in Reggie Virgil. You talk about Terrence Carter, who's going to fulfill his legacy as a tight end, which I think Texas Tech needs to really address, because tight end was a big need for last year and you didn't have that. I think the tight end room is going to be really good. I think that tight end room is going to be pretty interesting to look at. Not going to lie to you. And I think with what you're going to see from this Texas Tech team eventually is going to impress you a lot. Trust me on that one. I think that this Texas Tech team is probably the most underrated in all of college football. They may not go much, but I do think that Texas Tech has what it takes to be a CFP contender, to be a Big 12 championship contender. I think it does happen, and I think they end up being a CFP player at the end of the day. Now, let's talk about Illinois. Illinois, to me, is a dangerous threat in college football. Here's a team that returns 18 starters on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. It's really impressive just seeing what you've been able to bring back. Luke Altmaier is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in all of college football. I think he's probably the most underrated I think he's a top 3 or 5 quarterback in the Big 10. Just depending on what he does. And I know that a lot of people are going to critique me and say that, oh, that's not going to happen. Well, maybe not. It's definitely not out of the question that it could happen. I think Texas Tech is a really, really dangerous team that people need to pay attention to. Or Illinois is a dangerous team that people need to pay attention to in the Big Ten. It's a fairly easy schedule. You do get Illinois, you get Ohio State, and you get Indiana at home, which I think that one on September 20th is going to be a huge one. That'll determine what their CFP status will be. And I think it's going to really determine where we see Illinois at the end of the year. Number 3, Tennessee will end up missing the college football playoff. Now, I know Tennessee fans are going to be critical about what I say about them. And if we're being honest with where Tennessee was last year, they had a lot of expectations. They're supposed to be a CFP player. They were supposed to do all these great things. You just never could feel like they could dominate on a regular basis. It's always just seemed like they were in a battle at some point once they got into SEC play. Now, look, make no mistake. They got big wins down the stretch of the year. Big one at Florida, or big one against Florida, big one against Alabama. But there were just so many games down the stretch that you really just were not confident about from Tennessee that you could have them win that football game. I mean, here's a team that early on against Vanderbilt of all teams, were down 17-0 at one point. You gave up 14-0 at one point. And then you come back and you score, 28 unanswered? Something like that. But it just seems like you're not going to see the same high-flying offense like you saw most of last year. I think Nico played his best game against Vandy once he got the nerves out of his system. But how will this offensive line do? You're going to lose 3 guys that started last year. And in my opinion, I think that a guy like Lance Hurd is going to have to be that cornerstone there. Him and David Sanders are going to be your top 2 guys at that position. I think that Sanders is going to take a while to develop, but I think that he will eventually turn himself into a first-round prospect in the next 2 to 3 years. But I do think that there's so much that you have to look at as well. Dylan Sampson, he's gone to the NFL. James Pierce has gone to the NFL. The biggest thing that I have to say about this team is the Tim Banks defense, especially in that secondary, took a big hit. They were not good secondary-wise. They gave up a lot of big plays, and you saw it in that Ohio State game. They got humiliated on the outside. Jeremiah Smith humiliated them. Emeka Egbuka, quick out the backfield as a slot guy. Looking at the tight end game, G. Scott Jr. had a big game. And this offense just looked like it could move down the field against that Tennessee defense that was supposed to be one of the best in college football, and they just got humiliated. Secondary wise, you were not that good. And it was crazy to see with how consistent that you saw from a team like Tennessee that they would not do that well pass defensively. Yeah, you may have been 29th in the NCAA in pass defense, but look, you and sure you may have been 29th in yards allowed. That's fine and all. But still, I mean, you felt like you weren't dominant in one-on-one battles, and especially against good passing offenses like in Ohio State that dominated throughout that stretch. And teams that you were expecting to find some sort of stability with their offense, you just never could find that type of performance that Tennessee would put up against a top tier offense. And it just never happened. This could be their ceiling as being a first round playoff team or just barely missing the college football playoff. You get Georgia at home. You haven't beaten them since the miracle Hail Mary in 2016. You go to Tuscaloosa. You haven't won at Bryant-Denny since 2005. You play at Ben Hill Griffin near the end of actually, I don't think they even won in 2005. I could be wrong. I don't think you even beat Alabama. No, you haven't beaten Alabama since 2004. That's what's so unbelievable to me. 2004 was the last time you beat Alabama. I was born that year. Oh, by the way, that same year, also the last time they beat Florida in Gainesville. Your top three receivers from last year are gone. You have a young offensive line in 2024, 2025. If Tennessee finishes either 8-4 or 9-3, this is what you're going to have to deal with for the Josh Heupel era, is just not being able to win the big game on the road, not being able to secure a win against a top-tier opponent in college football, and this is what you're going to have to deal with. Whether you like it or not, that's the reality of where this team is at the current moment. So I don't know what you need to do, whether it be recruiting-wise, that's a big reason why Josh Heupel is still there is because of what you've been able to do. I would say the same thing for Hugh Freeze at Auburn. The biggest reason why he's still at Auburn is because of what he's done in the recruiting array wise. He has an excellent recruiting record. Now, he can't win and develop his guys. Maybe things will change in 2025 with Jackson Arnold as the quarterback. I don't know. We'll see what he does in this Hugh Freeze offense. But again, you're talking about a team that historically hasn't been a real contender consistently, especially after the bad decade they had in the 2010s. First part of the 2000s looked promising, but you just haven't had that consistency that you've had in a while. Josh Heupel was the first coach to give you that over the last 3 years. But maybe this is their ceiling. Will we see that throughout the rest of the year? I have no idea. But again, until we get to see them on tape, we can only create speculation. All right. Let's get into some more around college football first. I'm going to take a break real fast. Well, apparently it wasn't on. Anyway, Instagram, I'm going to have to end the live. Thank y'all for tuning in. About 6 of y'all, or actually 5 of y'all tuned in. Appreciate you. Have a good one. All right. Back to you goobers on the old gram or on the old X. X is an interesting word. Let me just say that. So, yeah. So what have y'all been up to? All right, here we go. Yeah, Instagram's done for now. All right. Sorry. Let me go ahead and get everything. Anyways, more recent news as we come back into here. Trades Green will be stepping away from the basketball program. This was something that I kind of knew was going to happen, knowing how the but also sorry, by the way. Let me pull up TikTok, by the way. I never would have thought I'd be broadcasting on TikTok, by the way. All right, let me pull up the TikTok. All right. Anyways. LSU 2 Sports standout Trades Green will be reportedly stepping away from the basketball team to focus on his academics, or he's just not getting enough playing time because he's averaging just 6.7 minutes, scoring 1.8 a game, and securing 1.7 rebounds per outing. So bottom line, he's not really needed. But honestly, it's not really that big of news. Here's what Coach Matt McMahon said. He said, after visiting with Coach Brian Kelly and Trades, the academic workload is heavy, so he's going. So he's going to be focusing on those academics for the time being and rejoin us at a later date. Not like he was needed anyway. Despite the relatively meager numbers on paper, McMahon has been thoroughly impressed with what he has to do. 6'7", 245 pounds, which, by the way, bulk up to 260 because he looks skinny. That dude is a man, by the way. If you guys don't know who Trades Green is, by the way, just look at what he did this year for LSU. He actually made a really big contribution for them, especially at that tight end position. I think he's a guy that could eventually become an X guy. I think he could transition, lose a bit of weight, maybe get down to like 220 and eventually become like an X receiver, something like that. This is what he said. I have such respect for what he's doing. He wasn't in a single meeting or practice until after the bowl game. He's a great teammate and brings great energy to practice. He could defend multiple positions and grabbed a few boards. If you guys don't know, played at Zachary, or initially started at East Feliciana for a while, but then transferred to Zachary for his senior year. Watched him a good bit last year. I actually talked about it with our good buddy Jay Sojourn, and literally last year, 2 years ago, whenever I first got started with the company I called the Tomorrow Today. He was great. Loved working with him for a little bit. Played high school football over in Zachary, Louisiana. 5-star prospect. Number 31 overall recruit in the 2024 cycle, according to the On3 industry ranking. A weighted average that utilizes all 4 major recruiting media companies. By the way, college football world has been using that a heck of a lot more. So we'll see what happens with that one. Honestly, I'm not really surprised. I think it's to the point where he's about to just start focusing on football. It gets to that point for a lot of athletes, especially if you were a two-sport. It's hard to be a two-sport athlete nowadays in college football, especially when your primary focus is on one sport. I think Jameis did it for 1 year while he was at FSU and then just focused solely on football once he won the Heisman Trophy. So, let's also talk about this. Rob Ryan pushing back on the nepotism narrative in coaching. You've got to do your job. Thank you, Rob Ryan, for telling us that, because honestly, people need it nowadays. So let's talk about this. So, given all the familial connections at play in his own illustrious coaching career, Rob Ryan doesn't hide the impact nepotism plays in his own coaching career, even if it's not what ultimately defined it. Of course, it also didn't hurt and played a roundabout role in Rob Ryan's decision to join Lynn at USC. Lynn was a former player of his, I believe. So, I got to thinking about it and kept selling it, and this is a young Mike Tomlin, the way I look at Lynn. D'Anton's as sharp as can be. He's a wonderful person. He's a great teacher. So my son's on the staff, and I'm teaching him like my father, a clear nepotism. Man, when Buddy Ryan hired me and Rex to coach with the Cardinals in 1994, we'd been college coaches, complete nepotism. Absolutely. Well, once Rob Ryan excited to influence his son's budding coaching career at USC. Well, once you get there, you've got to do the job. Both of us coached in the league for 25 years. I think we were decent coaches, but we needed a chance. I'm not bragging. I'm just telling the truth, and I want to do the same for my son. So to have him be around the best young coach, these coaches, I call them young because they're young compared to me. So it's an opportunity, and it's awesome. Rob Ryan then ended up recalling how his father, longtime assistant and former Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn, was convinced to join Rex Ryan's Buffalo Bills. Staff in 2013. Or it's in 2015, actually, but only after Rex hired D'Anton as a defensive assistant, his first actual coaching opportunity. Here's a team that finished 15th in the Big Ten, 77th nationally in total D after allowing an average of 377.1 a game in 2024. Things need to change, and that's why you're bringing in a guy like Rob Ryan, who brings that experience, who brings that coaching factor, brings that NFL pedigree with him, and that's what is so good about a guy like that and what he is bringing to the table at the end of the day. So whether you like it or not, that is exactly what you're going to get with a guy like Rob Ryan. And I love what he is going to bring to the table. I love what he's going to be able to do with this young roster. And I think I am really excited for what USC is about to bring to the table. Be right back in a little bit. Let me get it started on TikTok. Let's get the TikTok crowd up in here. All right, so we're going to struggle with the TikTok crowd. But guys, thank you all for joining. Heck of a show today. Appreciate it. Like, for real. Thank you guys for hopping in. We'll see you guys next time on the nightcap. Or not on the night.